Alright, picture this. The year is 1940. A fresh-faced actor named Ronald Reagan is playing a Secret Service agent, Brass Bancroft. The movie is called Murder in the Air, and it's all about a fictional American superweapon. This weapon can literally stop enemy planes in mid-flight. A newspaper in the film calls it the greatest peace argument ever invented. Reagan's character declares this weapon is the exclusive property of Uncle Sam. A Hollywood fantasy, right? Well, fast forward more than 40 years. That Hollywood fantasy becomes the centerpiece of President Ronald Reagan's real-life administration. He proposed something called the Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI, a plan for a space-based missile shield. The idea was so out there, so futuristic, that it got a nickname you've definitely heard, Star Wars. Reagan hated that nickname, by the way, but it stuck because the concept felt like it was straight out of a movie. Now, let's jump to January 2024. At a campaign rally in Laconia, New Hampshire, Donald Trump brings the dream back. He even uses the Star Wars nickname. He says it didn't work back in the 80s because the technology just wasn't there. But now, things have changed. Trump, ever the showman, acts out how it would work. He mimes typing on a keyboard. Ding, 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 he says. Missile launch? Shishing. He raises his hand to show the missile rising, then drops it to show the interception. Boom. He's a big fan of Israel's Iron Dome, the system that knocks short-range rockets out of the sky. And he makes a promise to build an Iron Dome over our country, a state-of-the-art shield made in the USA. Within a week of his inauguration, he signs an executive order to start the project, initially called the Iron Dome for America. A month later, it gets a rebrand. The new name? The Golden Dome. This whole idea, whether it's Reagan's SDI or Trump's Golden Dome, has this incredible cinematic appeal. It's a simple, powerful image, an impenetrable shield that makes America safe. But as one expert, Annette Stimier from the University of St. Andrews, puts it, missile defense is an area where facts and fiction blend. So let's separate the facts from the fiction. What is the Golden Dome, really? Trump's view is simple. Space is a battlefield, just like land, air, and sea, and America needs to dominate it. This is the same thinking that led him to create the U.S. Space Force in his first term. To lead the Golden Dome project, he appoints a four-star Space Force general, Michael Getline. General Getline lays out the stakes. He says America's enemies, specifically China and Russia, have been busy. They're modernizing their nuclear forces, building ballistic missiles that can carry multiple warheads. They're building hypersonic missiles that can travel at 6,000 miles an hour and hit the U.S. within an hour. They're building cruise missiles that can sneak around our radar, and submarines that can creep up on our shores. And worst of all, he says, they're building space weapons. Getline's message is clear. It is time that we change that equation and start doubling down on the protection of the homeland. So, what's the plan? The executive order outlines a multi-tiered system. Think of it like a fortress with multiple walls, new sensors and interceptors on the ground, in the air, and most importantly, in space. They'd all work together to stop any kind of threat, ballistic, hypersonic, or cruise missiles. And coordinating it all? Artificial intelligence, trained for real-time threat detection and response. But here's the key part, the direct link back to Reagan's Star Wars. The order demands the development and deployment of proliferated space-based interceptors capable of boost phase intercept. Let's break that down. Boost phase is the first few minutes after a missile launches. It's climbing, it's slow, it's hot, and it's still over enemy territory. It's the absolute best time to shoot it down. Think of it like trying to stop a quarterback. You can try to block the pass way downfield, or you can sack him the second he gets the ball. Sacking him is better, but it's a lot harder. That's boost phase intercept, and it's a problem we have never solved operationally. Why space-based interceptors? Because they'd be orbiting just a few hundred miles above the launch site. Ground-based interceptors in, say, Alaska, could be thousands of miles away from a launch in Asia, too far to react in time. Space gives you the ultimate high ground, but as Laura Grego, a scientist at the Union of Concerned Scientists, says, it's a really hard problem that hasn't been solved. So what do we have right now? Our current shield is called the Ground-Based Midcourse Defense, or GMD. It consists of 44 interceptor missiles, split between bases in Alaska and California. It was started by President Clinton in the 90s and ramped up by President George W. Bush. Its main job is to defend against a limited attack from a rogue state like North Korea. It is not designed to stop a massive, coordinated attack from a major power like Russia or China. And its success rate? Tests suggest it's about 50-50, a coin flip. The GMD has cost us over $63 billion since it started, and we spend another $20 to $30 billion a year on our other missile defense systems. Now, enter the Golden Dome. In May, Trump was presented with several plans. He picked one with a price tag of $175 billion. And a timeline for full deployment by the end of his term. That's an ambitious 2028 or 2029 deadline. On July 4th, a bill called the One Big Beautiful Bill approved an initial $24.4 billion in funding. Now, $175 billion sounds like a lot, but many experts think that's wildly optimistic. The Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, or CBO, ran the numbers. They projected the cost of just the space-based interceptors could be anywhere from $161 billion on the low end to a staggering $542 billion on the high end, over 20 years. General Chance Saltzman, the chief of space operations, was even asked about a $500 billion estimate. His response? "I'm 34 years in this business, I've never seen an early estimate that was too high." This revival of space-based interceptors is, according to former Pentagon official Leonore Tomero, probably the most controversial piece of Golden Dome, and it's already making waves around the world. Russia and China released a joint statement in May, calling the Golden Dome deeply destabilizing in nature. North Korea's foreign ministry warned it could turn outer space into a potential nuclear war field. This is where Trump and Reagan really differ. Reagan saw SDI as a tool for world peace. He even offered to share the technology with the Soviet leader, Mikhail Gorbachev. Trump sees Golden Dome as part of his America First brand. He's even used it as a bargaining chip, saying Canada could be covered by the shield for free if they agree to become the 51st state. For Trump, the Golden Dome is like his first-term promise to build a wall on the southern border. The wall was a physical barrier, but it was also a powerful symbol. The Golden Dome is the second-term version of that promise, a wall that extends the border to the entire American airspace. When he announced the plan, he sat in front of a mock-up. It showed a barrage of missiles being stopped by a shield with a literal golden glow. The image is powerful, a besieged America, protected by a heavenly shield. But let's get back to the technicals. How would this thing actually be built? Thanks to a Reuters report, we have details from a slide presentation given to 3,000 defense contractors in Huntsville, Alabama. The presentation's tagline was "Go fast, think big." It revealed a 4-layer architecture, 1 layer in space, and 3 layers on the ground. The space layer is for sensing, tracking, and the famous boost phase interceptors. The ground layers are broken down into an upper layer, an under layer, and limited area defense. The upper layer would use our most powerful interceptors, like the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, THAAD, and Aegis systems. It would also include the new Next Generation Interceptors, or NGI, made by Lockheed Martin. Currently, we have GMD launch sites for these big interceptors in California and Alaska. The slides revealed a surprise, a plan for a third major missile field, seemingly in the Midwest. The underlayer and limited area defense would use systems like the Patriot missile defense. It would also include 11 short-range missile batteries deployed across the continental U.S., Alaska, and Hawaii. The plan calls for new, modular, and relocatable launchers that can be deployed quickly without a lot of prep. The list of contractors involved is a who's who of the defense industry: Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, RTX, and Boeing. Interestingly, the slides did not mention Elon Musk's SpaceX, which had been part of an earlier bid. So, the plan is huge, complex, and has an incredibly tight deadline. General Getline was given just 30 days from his confirmation on July 17 to build his team, then 60 days to deliver an initial system design, and 120 days to present a full implementation plan, with all the satellite and ground station details. But the biggest question remains: how do you pay for a project that could cost $500 billion? The article suggests a major trade-off is already in the works, and the bill payer might be the U.S. Army. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth wrote a memo in April saying the Army needs to become leaner, and that it must prioritize investments in things like the Golden Dome for America. Military.com reported the service was considering a massive cut of up to 90,000 active duty troops. As defense expert Todd Harrison put it, they have made it pretty clear that they're going to be downsizing, and they are the bill payer for Golden Dome. This brings us to the technological hurdles. Is the tech really here, as Trump and Hegseth claim? In February, the American Physical Society updated a report on missile defense. They concluded that defending against even a small number of North Korean ICBMs would be a daunting challenge. Then they dropped a bombshell number. To counter a single North Korean solid propellant ICBM, they estimate you would need over 1,000 orbiting interceptors. Want to stop 10 missiles launched at once? You'd need 10 times that many. That's a constellation of over 10,000 space weapons. And all of those thousands of satellites would be vulnerable to cyber attacks and anti-satellite weapons. There's another problem. The presentation slides noted that the U.S. has built interceptors and re-entry vehicles before, but it has never built a vehicle that can handle the intense heat of re-entry while also actively targeting an enemy missile. It's a brand new engineering challenge. Even the name, Golden Dome, is a political risk. Todd Harrison notes that tying the project so closely to Trump's personal brand makes it toxic for folks on the other side of the aisle. Democrats are already calling it a boondoggle and a slush fund. This all echoes the original Star Wars debate. Back in the 80s, Gorbachev didn't see SDI as a shield. He saw it as an offensive weapon. Why? Because if one country has a perfect shield, it can launch a first strike against another country without fear of retaliation. It completely upends the balance of power that has kept the nuclear peace for decades, the doctrine of mutually assured destruction, or MAD. J. Robert Oppenheimer, father of the atomic bomb, famously compared the US and the Soviet Union to two scorpions in a bottle. Either one could kill the other, but only at the cost of its own life. Reagan wanted to escape that bottle. He thought SDI was the answer. But his refusal to give up SDI at the 1986 Reykjavik summit may have blocked a historic deal with Gorbachev to eliminate all ballistic missiles. As historian Edward Tabor Linenthal says, now there are many more scorpions, so it has to be a bigger bottle. This brings us to the ultimate risk. Leonor Tomaro calls it the nightmare scenario. Adversaries, feeling threatened by this new American shield, decide to attack the Golden Dome space infrastructure first. This could create a massive field of orbital debris, making space unusable for everyone. It could, she says, lead to inadvertent escalation and miscalculation and lower the threshold to conflict and nuclear war. So, what are we left with? Trump has promised a nearly impenetrable shield, with a success rate very close to 100%. He says, we will truly be completing the job that President Reagan started 40 years ago, forever ending the missile threat to the American homeland. The dream is incredibly appealing. Who wouldn't want to be perfectly safe from the most destructive weapons ever created? But the reality is a web of staggering costs, unsolved technical challenges, and huge geopolitical risks. Is the Golden Dome the greatest peace argument ever invented, as that old movie claimed? Or is it a high-stakes gamble that could make the world a much more dangerous place? The one thing everyone agrees on is that it's a massive, disruptive change. And as Annette Stimier says, what makes it so difficult is the unpredictability. No one knows what will actually happen next.